using Zoom is exhausting. Just because you could see somebody visually doesn't mean you connect.
Is the thought of being imperfect keeping you from taking action? Welcome to Inspired Action for Imperfect Humans. Each week, we give you real-life stories and thought-provoking research that inspires your soul to live a more fulfilled life through your own actions. From the heart of Calgary, Canada, here are your hosts, award-winning coaches, Christopher Lawrence and Kyle Kalu.
Hi, it's Christopher Lawrence with the Inspired Action for Imperfect Humans podcast. I come with the Inspired Action, and my co-host Kyle Kalu comes with the Imperfect.
Seriously? Really?
Sorry.
I just want to know why every podcast has to start with you trying to take me on. Like, what is it about it?
I think
Folks,
it's
what
because
is it about it?
The listeners love it.
Really? I don't think you're doing it for the listener, because there's something you get out of it, which is why you do it.
I think they probably all think I'm really mean, actually, which is funny. No, don't say that. It's not. It's not true. It's so funny because I was like, my mom listens to this podcast, so she's going to have something to say. So here's the thing, because I'm going to tell a story about her. So I'm so frustrated with my mother because she has a sibling who's in need, and so she keeps going out to help him and rescue him. And it's like, look, like, this is a sibling. I'll tell you the exact story. Okay, he's going through a little bit of a family situation right now, and it involves some photos. So he's got to deal with these photos and give them back to his ex, basically, is what it is. Okay, he's got to give them back to his ex. So which is fine. Like,
sounds like a juicy story, actually.
Well, we're not going to get into it. You know what? They're really kind people, and it just didn't work out. And it's unfortunate, but anyway, so it's fine. Like, so mom is going down to scan photos, and Kyle, I'm sure that there's like 10,000 photos, if not more. Like there's so many photos, right? So you know, my aunt would capture, you know, moments. Every moment, and you know, and bless her soul, because honestly, it's just, you know, it's like she's the only one that did. So
right. So he has the photos and she wants them back, or
or
and trying to figure out how to share the photos, or
that's it. And so my mom is going to, you know, went down to help scan, and so I'm like reading my mother for this.
Photos.
I'm like, why are you doing this? Like, there's services that do this. This family does well enough that they can pay for this service. Okay. Right? They do well enough that they can pay for this service. So it's like, why are you going to do this for him? Like, you are giving so much of yourself to everybody else. And then on the flip side, I'm telling this to one of my other best friends who isn't Kyle. Yes, I have two. So sorry.
I appreciate that she does some of the heavy lifting as well, because it takes a village to be this guy's friend. Okay.
Well, so I'm griping about this situation about my mom, and I'm like, why is she giving so much of herself? And then she starts to laugh, and she's like, oh, this reminds me of you trying to rescue everybody on the planet.
Thank you. I was just going to say,
I'm trying to give everything away.
I'm just thinking, but does she want to do it? Or is she saying that she does it? Because I can understand.
Well, here's the thing. So,
if she doesn't want to do it.
Well, I don't know, and it doesn't matter to me. I don't know. Do you think you'd want to spend your long weekend scanning photos?
Oh, do you think you'd want to pull over every time you see a stranded dog on the road and try to rescue it?
Yes, I did.
Right, I don't, but you do.
Yeah,
so to your question, do you want, again, if you didn't ask that question,
so this is exactly what Sarah was saying. Sarah was saying, Christopher, that is you. And I started to laugh, and my face went red, and I'm like, shut up.
Yeah.
So anyway, so despite the fact that you and probably all of our audience thinks that I'm really unkind, I do like to rag on Kyle's ass a little bit, because he, he's not a good person.
We're still waiting on why. We're still, I mean, myself included, we're waiting on hearing the answer why.
He's not a good person. Speaking of which, and, you know, spending time with friends.
But I've gotten used to it. I've gotten used to it. I've gotten used to it, and I've gotten used to it.
I'm choking on everything you're saying. I just can't.
And I think, you know, I would say your mom maybe is not as tired of helping him, of supporting him, whatever that looks like. I mean, and so she may enjoy it, and because if she's complaining about it, that's a different story. I haven't heard that. I don't know. I'm just saying, how long is she going to be able to do it? Like, I mean, because it sounds like this
she's enjoying it
up.
as much as she wants. I think she enjoys spending time with her family, but which we've had so little of. But to be honest with you, it could have also been an excuse just to go hang out in person. Because like, when was the last time you saw somebody in person, right? Like we do, you know, we are meeting in office, everybody's masked up, we use barriers and the rest of it. But I didn't even want to do this podcast. Like, I'm so zoomed out. Like how you think about some of our days where we spend like 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day on Zoom with clients. And then I have my night, you're taking classes where you're on Zoom in the evening. And then I'm facilitating classes where I'm on Zoom in the evening. I sometimes spend, like, in all honesty, between 8 to 12 hours a day on Zoom. Oh my God, I'm so tired of it. Like, I'm zoomed out.
Yeah, it's a lot. And then not only that, is being on Zoom is one thing, but if you're facilitating or you're on both ends, there's things that you need to do and learn, and the technology, and just there's the whole whack of other things that comes. And I think you mentioned something which I'm seeing in surveys popping up quite often, is the piece around, what are you required to do with this? Like, what are some of the things that you're supposed to be doing, right? Because I know what I mean by that is we were all worried about technology. When the pandemic happened, we're all worried about the technology. We have to, do this. How many people are going to work from home? How are they going to stay connected? But the issue is it wasn't the technology. It was, we were depriving ourselves of human connections. Right? That has been the biggest issue. And so to your point where you said about your mom, is she running down there because she's trying to be helpful? Or is it because she's like, I haven't seen another person besides my husband, X amount of time. So any reason to go and build that human connection, it makes sense. And I think that's what's happening for a lot of people, at least from my perspective, is that we really are missing this human connection. And any reason we get to go out there, maybe that's something we're doing.
Well, so here's this thing. There's this article called "What Will Work Look Like After COVID-19?" And so it was an interview that Greater Good magazine did. So Greater Good magazine is a science-based insights for a meaningful life. They interviewed Christina Banks. It comes from Berkeley, by the way, right? That's where this comes from. So the magazine. So they interviewed Christina Banks on what the pandemic has taught us about work. And so it's very, very interesting. One of the things she was asked, what's the biggest lessons of our experience in the pandemic so far, specifically at work? Or maybe it's better to ask, what are the biggest losses? And Christina Banks says, using Zoom is exhausting. Just because you could see somebody visually doesn't mean you connect. Bingo. What we need for connection is eye contact. Right now, I'm looking at your face, not on the screen, not at the camera where I could be looking into your eyes. I'm looking at your face. So we can't actually establish eye contact with Zoom. So there's no closeness between us. That's been lost. The connection isn't the same. We've also lost spontaneous interaction, and that has a serious business impact. I want to read this to you, Kyle, because this is something we experienced when our staff was fully working from home. And we started to see behaviors that it's like, if we were seeing this in the office, it would have been an extremely difficult situation. Right. Because it's like the appearance is that these people aren't performing. And it's not because we're going after them and looking
it's
after
not,
them.
it wasn't a competency
we saw a higher
issue.
level of
It was,
mistakes. This is what we've said. She says, we've lost spontaneous interaction, and that has serious business impact. That's where creativity and innovation spring forth. It's never planned. You may have an R&D group, but they don't sit down and say, okay, we're going to be creative today, or we're going to be innovative today, and by 5 o'clock we'll get a new product envisioned. Like, that doesn't happen. Inspiration comes when you are least thinking about it, when you're doing something else, or you're looking out your window. But it comes to you because somebody has said something, or you've met somebody who has a different point of view, or there has been something that you've seen that triggers something new. Yes. But we don't have that kind of water cooler talk anymore. You and I experienced this specifically with like the day-to-day interactions. Like, it's like you leave your office to go to the washroom and somebody catches you and says, hey, I have an idea, or I have a thought, or hey, I'm having this problem.
Can I run something by you? Yeah.
But during COVID, it was like, here's a text message. We need a Zoom call. We need to, screen share. And it was just like, it wasn't organic. And also, like, those little micro interactions, you and I, it's just like we pop in. It's like, hey, do you have time right now? I was like, yeah, I got a couple minutes. And then we have this interaction, and it's a conversation that evolves. But during this time, it's like every single thing we did in our business was a scheduled text message, and yes, it's like, oh, there's all these great tools for teams. None of it is the same as being in person. I can tell you this too. Right. Most coaches actually coach virtually and have since before COVID. Yeah. Our unique offer is that we will coach people who live in our city. We will coach them in person in a professional office space. It makes
and they've come to appreciate that. They've said that.
They come to appreciate it, and they'll say, I couldn't get another coach to meet me in person, or if they do, it's in Starbucks or in the person's home, and it's not a professional setting. And so I'm not bashing it. I'm just saying there are things that get missed when you don't get to do those face-to-face interactions. It is not the same. We're built for connection.
Yeah, I think that's the type of agile environment that we're in right now, right? Is that there's so many other moving pieces, but there's something about even, I don't know if this article mentions it or not, because I haven't read it. It's just this energy. You know how we used to say, I'm just picking up off your energy. You know, when you go into a room and someone's really lull, you pick up on that, or someone's like super excited, you'd be like, I really enjoyed that conversation. And you don't get a chance to feel that or sense that, I find, in it. Here's the other thing. I'm curious what you think about this. Is people have been, with the vaccine and everything that's going on, a lot of people are talking about, because it comes up with my leadership clients as well, is I can't wait us to get back to normal. And I'm like, get back to what? Because do you really want to go back to 2019? Because that's what you're saying when you say that, right? So is it that they want to go back, do you think, to 2019? Or is it they want some normalcy, right? Whatever that new normalcy looks like. So is that what it's going to look like, you think, post-COVID?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that a lot of I think some of it will, there will be lots of innovations that help move us forward for years to come. I think certainly physical office space is going to, it's going to be very different. I do think that while the research shows greater than 60% of people want a combination of work from home and in the office, most people don't want to work from home full time. Most people don't want to work in the office full time. Most people want a combination of both. I think that is actually the best thing to do. Yeah. You can't in certain jobs, retail, like brick and mortar retail, you have to be at the store. Like you can't, somebody's got to open it, close it, and process transactions. I still think I do think most people want to go and touch and feel products, rather than ordering everything online, but it depends what it is. Yeah. I think clothing for sure. It's like, I don't order clothes online. I don't like the process. I want to try it, touch it, feel it. But in Canada, we're losing so many clothing retailers that you're not going to have a choice pretty quick here.
Or you find you can get someone who knows your the style you like and your size and all those things, and they can get the clothes for you, and then you can just try them on.
Yeah, totally. One of the other things that she says in this article is that people just aren't getting acknowledgement like they used to. Right. So there's this like unspoken positive spirit that people find at work, and we're not getting acknowledged the way that we used to, because acknowledgement just doesn't come through. Now we're on Zoom and here's some verbal feedback. It doesn't come from, it doesn't just come from here's a bonus raise, job title, promotion.
Right.
It comes in the forms of like, oh, really good job on that. But that's like a micro transaction.
Yeah. And if it's too deliberate, who's going to do it? If I have to set up a Zoom call to tell you good job or great feedback, versus here, it's just like, oh, hi, you look fantastic today. What's going on? Wow, you seem really happy. How was your weekend? Like, you could pick up on these things by how people are moving and how people are doing certain things. Or, I really just want to let you know that was a good job. You know what I mean? So is that what she's alluding to? Because I could see that easily, where you just don't have that. Besides, oh, where are you? Oh, that's cute little painting. Oh, that's nice, right? I mean, it's not necessarily the person. So I definitely see that. So I'm curious, what are some people's ideas or thoughts? Yeah, what do you do with that? How do we?
Yeah, I do think you really have to check your locale. But I think the first thing, Kyle, is people have to ask themselves, and you got to get real mindful with this. Like, sit down with a pen and paper. Yeah. What do I need? Because this is all affecting mental health. Yeah. All of it is affecting mental health. And any denial or trivialization of that is complete ignorance. And I would say willful, deliberate ignorance.
Yeah. And luckily, I think we've come a long way. A lot of people don't know this, but I kind of have a little TikTok thing on the side. And when I was on TikTok live yesterday, there's a guy that I follow and who follows me, and he does a lot of talk about the mental health phase. And I actually invited him to connect on my live, and it was an interesting conversation. And, we were talking about its impact that this is happening. And I was thinking, if we didn't get this, we have a long way to go, but if we didn't get to where we are right now with mental health awareness, can you imagine what that would have looked like if the pandemic hit? And I know in some countries it did hit even harder, that are not as advanced or progressive when it comes to mental health. So I agree with you. And even the younger groups who don't even know, right? We're hearing a lot of these other statistics out there of younger groups. So I like that. It's just being aware of what is it that I need. And I think the other thing I would say to contribute to that is identify what your new normal is. I know the term that we're using, but identify what your new normal is. Is it a combination of, online and in person? Is it a combination of when I have my moments offline, because maybe my work, there is no option, but what do I do in my real world situation? Do I do more going out or doing other things that creates that human connection?
I agree with you, Kyle. I do think I'm just going to put this out here. I think when we talk about identifying what you need, I think you're providing a really interesting technical solution. I think the part that I would add to that is that we actually need to create more care in our workplaces. Like, we need people to ask, are you having a bad day today? And not from a defensive position. Are you okay? What do you need? One of my most favoriteest clients, they're all my favorites, but one of my most favoriteest clients for this reason. And I do mean that, like, all of my clients are my favorites.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me tell you what impressed me about this guy. He's a retail store worker.
Yeah.
He's not getting the support that he believes he needs from management. There's a little bit of willfulness there, right? There's a little bit of willfulness. There's a little bit of stubbornness because he wants things done his way. And, the truth is that he's probably not wrong. He does have poor leadership, right? But with his team, he's actually reaching out to them and saying, how are you doing? Tell me what's happening in your life right now. And he's getting all sorts of stories, and he just cannot believe like what people are disclosing, and where, he's got a seemingly bad performer, and he's like, what's going on? Like, he sees one of his employees sitting outside the store an hour early, just like waiting before the store is even open. And he's like, what are you doing here? He's like, I just thought I'd come early, but he could tell something was wrong. And he said, what are you actually doing here early? And the kid breaks down, starts crying. He says, I just became homeless. My parents don't want me to live there anymore. It's COVID. I have nowhere to go. And he's like, okay, let's get you set up with some resources right now. But how many times does that happen and we just don't fucking ask? Or somebody's relationship ends. And it's like, I don't care if it's like, you know, you're working with a 16-year-old. And it's like, oh, come on. Like, you know, it's like check it at the door, you know, is what we say. And it's like, it's like, but that's a real world experience for somebody that potentially has a long-term impact. So why not allow them to feel supported? And I promise you, you'll get more from them. It's like, it sounds like it was really hard for you, you know, that kind of thing. So I think that in addition to check in on your own needs and then finding innovative ways of having those met, and in addition to kind of looking at the technical side of how are we pulling this all together, the stuff that you were talking about, Kyle, I think the last part of this really needs to be like doing your very best to make human connections. You know, doing your very best to make human connections, as many as possible, right? You know, and
being deliberate, being
deliberate about it. And it's not going to be the same. You know, it's not going to be the same. Know your own risk tolerance, know your civic laws as well, your provincial or state laws, and your federal laws as well. Know those so that you're working within those, because I'm not going to promote breaking the rules, although I haven't met anybody who hasn't.
And, you know, defined your post-COVID, right? Like we talk about goals and dreams.
Huge, Kyle. Like actually getting in front of it now and influencing the changes. Like this is what I'd like my post-COVID role to look like. Let's find a way to make that happen, because I've proven to you that I can work from home.
Absolutely.
So defining that post-COVID role, like actually getting in front of it and saying, this is what I'd like it to look like, and being specific, working with your leadership. And your leadership is going to say, I don't have answers, or they're going to be vague, or they're going to be distant. And it's probably because they're waiting to see what they are told, you know, as well. So from their higher ups, right? So I think the idea though, is to plant the seed and say, this is really what I'm looking for. This is how, you know, my quality of life is going to be impacted by this. I'm going to be able to get so much more done.
Right. And that's in the workplace, and also from your relationships, from your friendships, from your, like, it doesn't have to start and end at work. It could be in your marriage, in your relationships that you have with friends and family. You could also influence what your post-COVID would look like.
That's right. Okay, folks, what's your imperfect inspired action for being zoomed out? What's your imperfect inspired action for post-COVID? And know that it's time to start taking steps, start making plans, and start influencing now.
It's our goal to build a global community of inspired action takers, and we can only do that with your help. So if you love inspired action, please leave a review on your favorite podcasting app and share us on your socials. You've heard from us. Now we want to hear from you. Go to inspiredactionpodcast.ca and tell us, what is the inspired action you took this week? Next week on Inspired Action for Imperfect Humans.
But then you'll talk forever, and then you'll move on to the next subject, and then we'll get an opportunity to say it. Basically, this is why we got divorced.